André the Giant.
Japan, exact my boots. Just like they said, everything is big. It's come from.
Imagine being so big at birth, your parents didn't know whether to swaddle you or call a doctor. André Roussimoff wasn't just born. He arrived like a warning shot from nature itself. On May 19, 1946, in the sleepy French town of Coulommiers, a newborn entered the world weighing 13 pounds. That's nearly double the average. Nurses gasped. His mother, already exhausted, could barely believe it. And that was just the beginning. By the time André could walk, he towered over toddlers. By age 10, he was taller than most adults. By 12, he stood over 6'3", and people whispered behind his back. Even in church, something wasn't right. Was it a curse? A miracle? A mutation? His parents were poor farmers, humble, simple people trying to raise 5 kids in a quiet rural village. But André made that impossible. He couldn't fit in the desks at school. He couldn't ride the bus. Literally, he was too big to fit through the aisle. So guess who drove him to school? The famous playwright Samuel Beckett. Yes, the Nobel Prize-winning author of Waiting for Godot. He lived nearby, and one day he just offered. So there they were, a future wrestling icon and a literary genius, driving in silence through the French countryside, just 2 misfits avoiding the noise. But while the outside world might have marveled at him, inside his home, life wasn't kind. André was pulled out of school at 14, not to pursue a dream, but to plow fields and haul hay on a crumbling family farm. He never complained, but inside, he was trapped, a growing myth in a shrinking world. No one knew it yet, but the world's most famous giant was already living a life far more tragic and far more fascinating than anyone would dare imagine. He didn't choose wrestling. Wrestling rescued him. By the time André was 17, he had a body built by pain and a soul starving for escape. He had grown so big, regular furniture broke beneath him. Clothes had to be custom-made. People didn't stare anymore, they gawked. Whispers turned into questions, and questions became mockery. So he did what no one expected from someone so enormous. He ran. Not away, but toward something. Paris. The lights. The noise. The unknown. He took on any job that paid, and one in particular unlocked his destiny. He became a mover, but not your average box and tape kind of guy. André was the go-to guy for moving pianos solo. Word spread. Whispers turned into stories. Stories became legend. And soon, a wrestling promoter showed up, not with a handshake, but with a vision. That vision turned this giant nobody into a global phenomenon. André said yes, not because he loved wrestling, but because he had nothing to lose. He wrestled under the name Jean Ferret, inspired by a French folklore hero. At first, it was local matches in smoky halls, but something was different. When André entered the ring, people didn't just cheer, they froze, gasped, stared. The room changed. He was massive, yes, but more than that, he had presence, power, and fans couldn't get enough. But here's where it gets juicy. Promoters didn't just sell him as a wrestler, they sold him as a myth, a gentle giant, a man too big for this world. They started to build the André we all thought we knew, the undefeated force, the soft-spoken monster, the mystery. What fans didn't see? André was in pain. His joints screamed, his back throbbed, his body was starting to betray him, even before he hit 20. But he didn't stop, because for the first time, the giant wasn't alone. He was admired, respected, needed. And then, the phone rang. Not from France, not even from Europe. Canada wanted him, Japan needed him, and America was about to make him a legend. But no one, not even André, was prepared for what came next. He didn't just rise, he exploded into the global spotlight. By the early 1970s, André's name was echoing through locker rooms around the world. He had already stunned fans across France and Canada, but now Japan was calling. And in Japan, where tradition and strength were sacred in wrestling, André was a revelation. They called him Monster Roussimoff, not just because of his size, but because he looked like something out of a comic book, towering over opponents, crushing them with a single slam, and walking out of matches like he hadn't even broken a sweat. Crowds didn't just cheer, they worshipped him. But the real game changer? Vince McMahon Sr. saw something that no one else did. André wasn't just a wrestler, he was an attraction, like a rare animal at a circus or a once-in-a-lifetime performer you had to see to believe. So Vince made a bold move. He rebranded him André the Giant. But that wasn't the genius part. Vince limited André's appearances. You didn't get to see him every week. You couldn't just turn on the TV and catch him fighting. No, André became rare, scarce, valuable. And when he did appear, it felt like the universe had shifted. Fans began believing the legend. André was undefeated for 15 straight years. Could it be true? Not quite. He had lost a few times, but the myth was too good to correct, and the promoters knew that. They leaned into it. The invincible giant. The man who couldn't be beaten. The myth kept growing, just like André's fame, but behind the scenes, André was hurting. He couldn't fit in airplane seats, hotel beds snapped, chairs buckled. He had to special order everything from toothbrushes to silverware, and still, he smiled for fans. Still, he took pictures. Still, he traveled. 300 matches a year. He went from crushing opponents to stealing scenes in a fairy tale, and it nearly broke him. By the mid-1980s, André wasn't just famous, he was iconic. His face was on posters, lunchboxes, and action figures. He had transcended wrestling. Then came the movie that would change his image forever, The Princess Bride. The screenwriter, William Goldman, had written the part of Fezzik with one man in mind, André, a gentle soul, a poetic brute, a giant with a soft heart. No one else could play it. And director Rob Reiner agreed. They reached out, André said yes, but from the start, it was a struggle. English wasn't André's first language, reading a movie script way harder than memorizing wrestling promos. He stumbled on words, got nervous, felt out of place on set. But here's what made him different. He didn't give up. The crew worked with him, slowly. Rehearsals turned into coaching sessions, line by line, syllable by syllable. He poured everything into it, and just when things started working, his body failed him. Years of damage, constant pain. His back was so destroyed that he couldn't catch Princess Buttercup in one key scene. So the film crew rigged her with wires. It looked like André caught her effortlessly, but behind the curtain, he could barely stand. Another scene had him on a horse. Problem? No horse on earth could safely carry him. They had to rig the saddle, control the horse, and basically fake the entire shot. But no one watching ever knew, because André, despite everything, delivered a performance that was real, honest, magical. Lines like, "Anybody want a peanut?" became pop culture gold. Audiences laughed, cried, and fell in love with the man they thought they knew, and now saw in a whole new light. And André, he was proud. So proud that he carried a VHS tape of The Princess Bride everywhere he went. He showed it to people, friends, strangers, waiters, anyone, because for once, he wasn't just the giant, he was the hero. But while the world was cheering him on, his body was on the verge of giving out. Would you like me to continue with point 5 and keep the tension, emotional tone, and pacing high? This is building toward WrestleMania 3, his tragic final years, and the heartbreaking reality of his role as a father. Let me know if you'd like to keep going. André the Giant was larger than life. But in the end, life was too small for him. He wrestled across continents, played a hero on screen, inspired millions. But ask Robin Christensen Roussimoff, the daughter he barely knew, and she'll tell you, he wasn't the giant to me. He was just my dad. 5 meetings, that's all they shared. No bedtime stories, no holidays, no goodbyes. When André died in a Paris hotel in 1993, she didn't even find out until a month later, through a lawyer. The man who had carried wrestling, carried Hollywood, carried the weight of a world that stared and cheered, never got the chance to carry his daughter. And yet, somehow, Robin carries him. Not through fame, not through body slams or red carpets, but through truth. She guards his legacy like armor, fighting to show the world the man behind the myth, the pain, the isolation, the humor, the heart. Because André the Giant didn't just leave behind a wrestling legacy. He left behind a daughter who refuses to let him be remembered as just a freak, a legend, or a punchline. She reminds us that being a giant isn't about size, it's about soul. And sometimes the quietest voice carries the loudest truth.
The world watched André the Giant, but only one person ever truly carried him, and she didn't do it in the ring.